with YETicket.com. I'm here talking with director, producer, writer Zia, and for his new film called Know Your Place. How you doing, Zia?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Yeah, and give us your full name.
Yes, Zia Mohajerjasbi.
Yeah, and you Iranian, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Uh, and how long you been here in the States? Were you born here or what? Give me a
Yes,
little history.
I'm first generation. My father came over from Iran in the 70s. So I'm born and raised in Seattle.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in
Yeah.
fact, this film, Know Your Place, is about Seattle. And the thing about it, I've been to Seattle at least four times in my lifetime. And the neighborhoods that you shot the scenes in, I was never in those neighborhoods. I'm always downtown, near the
Okay.
Nido, and also at they got a military base there. I was there also. And, but this feels more about, well, how the people who live there are moving out because of, well, people moving in with money. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So Seattle, I think, has been one of the fastest gentrifying cities in the country over the last decade. Due in large part to like a huge tech boom that's going, not dissimilar to what's been going on in the Bay Area, right? In San Francisco and Oakland and all of that. Um, so yeah, it's been
Yeah.
going on.
Also, this film is about some East Africans, especially with the main character Robel, played by Joseph Smith. Tell us
Yes.
a little bit more about this character.
Yeah, so Robel Haile, he's Eritrean American. So the family at the center of the film is all from Eritrea. And the best friend in the film is from Ethiopia. So the Habesha community in Seattle is sort of central to the narrative that's in the film, and it's set against the backdrop of this moment of redevelopment and rapid transition in Seattle due to, the tech boom and sort of gentrification and all the things that are kind of going on in a wider context. So yeah.
Yeah, I saw some of that too when I was in Seattle. I saw many different people there in Seattle, and I felt that too. I said, "Wow, this is pretty good." Because not only there, I saw that too. Also in Minnesota, that there too. And I live in South Florida, and so of course, a lot of Hispanics here, but not only Hispanics, Haitians too. So I mean, it's happening everywhere with different cultures living in these cities here in the United States, which they call the melting pot, and which is happening everywhere. But this had a personal effect on you because, well, you moved from Seattle to LA, but when you came back or when you come to Seattle, you see that a lot, don't you?
Yeah, there's a sort of stark contrast. Like, so I moved down to LA in like 2013. And man, every time I would come back, every 6 months, every year, whatever it was, there was even sometimes every 3 months I'd come back, and it's something looks entirely different, right? Like this whole neighborhood block is gone, or this restaurant that I used to hit up all the time, that's no longer there. Friends that used to live, around a certain area, like they're all moving out, like that kind of thing. And Seattle's crane game was very strong for a long time, just with all the construction going on. So yeah, I mean, in a way, it's like being from here and so familiar with the place, and then kind of coming in and out like that was kind of strangely disorienting, right? And it was part of what inspired, writing this film. And I should mention this too, at the one of the first kind of things that some of the folks that are involved in the film, both behind the camera and also in the cast, Joseph and Nati, the two leads in the film,
Right.
included, was so I met Joseph in a neighborhood called Yesler Terrace. That was a neighborhood that a lot of my Eritrean friends actually grew up in. So you know, folks I know, Flixum, Emmanuel, Solomon, these were all guys my age that came up there like in the 80s and 90s. And they were we got together with a few friends and sort of hatched out the plan for like a short film. And this was back in 2013. And the reason why this kind of came up on our radar is because Yesler Terrace, which was the first racially integrated public housing project built in the United States, like post World War II, was slated for redevelopment and a complete demolition. So if you go there now, it's entirely unrecognizable. It's high rises, it's market rate condos, it's all this stuff. There's a community center. I think that's the only thing that's left. But one of the ideas with the short film back in 2013 was let's make it a time capsule of like the mid 90s and let's cast it all from the neighborhood or folks that are connected to the neighborhood. So that's how I first met Joseph and Nazi and some of the other folks that are now in Know Your Place. And so there's kind of been a organic kind of sort of meta narrative around making this film in terms of ties to the community and friendships and relationships that kind of informed the process and the casting and all this kind of stuff. So I'd actually written Know Your Place with these two young men in mind to play the leads. And that's sort of, how the centerpiece of our cast, and we sort of built around them in terms of all the supporting roles and stuff. So
Yeah. Also, another reason I like this film too is because it hit home for me. I'm from Chicago originally, but many of my friends, family members I grew up with, they all live in the suburbs of Chicago, and they still have a large African American community there. But many of them are moving out of Chicago, and their neighborhoods now are being taken over with new construction and things like that. And it's getting expensive to live in Chicago. But
it's expensive everywhere, I swear. Like,
yeah. Yeah, in fact, I'll be in your town this weekend. I'll be in LA this weekend, matter of fact. And I love LA. Now, getting back to your filmmaking with this film, Know Your Place, when you are casted with these two actors here, you have a history with them already. But what made you feel that they can do this whole film and draw this film together, a complete narrative?
Right. I think it sort of felt like an organic next step in terms of like where I was at as a filmmaker, because it's also my first film as well, or first feature film. It was their first feature film, and aside from a couple other people that had participated in that short film that I'd mentioned, everyone in the film is a first time performer or second time if they were in that short. And so I think it took a lot of folks trusting me and what I was asking of them, and then a lot of trust, as a director and a filmmaker, in terms of folks really sort of resonating with, showing up and really doing this thing that I was, asking of them. And so I feel like there was at the core of all this, I think, a real relationship in terms of a collaboration and in terms of sort of building the rapport that was how we wanted to conduct our set and get through telling this story together. And one of the big things that we did was, before ever getting onto set or putting a camera in front of anyone or whatever, was we just rehearsed a lot. So we got the script down, like, really fluidly. There was a lot of kind of collaborations in the rehearsal process. So some of the dialogue would change a bit. I also like kind of the edges, I call the edges of the script, were kind of fluid, just in terms of the way, like, the boys in particular, like, wanted to say things, right? Like, oh, Zia, this line, it makes sense. I want to say the spirit of that line, but I kind of want to say it like this, or whatever. This is how I would say it to my friend. And so we would kind of collaborate and sort of tweak things to sort of make it feel like it was really, representative of the experience we were trying to show within the relationships on screen and within the community that's on screen. And we did that kind of across the board, even with all the aunties, right? Like, I wrote it with, my Persian aunties in mind or whatever, knowing that, hey, when we go to rehearsal, we're going to change certain things, so it's with these Eritrean aunties speaking Tigrinya instead of my auntie speaking Farsi or whatever. So it was, in that way, it's interesting because it was kind of like transferable in a lot of ways and felt authentic, even on the first read, but really tailoring a lot of the small things so that it feels like um, it's like it's for folks who live the experience. The idea
Right.
was like, we're not explaining anything to you, right? It's like you get to watch this, like, yep, like this is what it is, right? And it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
um it's almost like that. What the idea was, sort of like that was like the central audience, and then everyone around them can sort of keep up or drop in and just be with the story. So
Yeah, 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 and also something I was familiar with too. That Robel, he had to take the suitcase to a relative, and that suitcase contains things for other family members, because their family members is moving back to Africa, and it was very important for him to get it there. And his friend Fame helped him out too. I really enjoyed that journey that they went through to get the suitcase to the person who needed and wanted that suitcase, and his mother put it together and trusted him to
right.
complete that task. And of course, as a young kid, he really didn't want to do it. But wow, the extent that they went through to finish that task, that's how did you get them to believe that, to believe in that task?
Right, right. There's man, like, so when I was talking to Mama Salam, who plays Robel's mom in the film, that was one of the things we talked about a lot. Is I was like, okay, imagine there's this errand and you got to do this and this and that. Would you entrust your 15-year-old son? And she was like, not the first person I would ask. And so we had to go through this. And this was one of the things where I was like, yeah, I want this to really work and be believable within the constraints of the plot, right? And so, without spoiling things, but you've seen the film. That's why that's what kind of like led to. I sort of like I hit her with a ton of questions of like, okay, well, what if this was happening in your life? What if you had somebody sick at home and you had to take care of them? You did call a friend, but your friend's not available. Your daughter, who you trust more and is older and more responsible, she actually has to go to work for these reasons and she can't do it. So basically, kind of getting to the point where we kind of arrived at, yeah, I would, if that was my only option, of course I would ask my son to do it, and I would hope that
Yeah,
it gets done. And then on the flip side of that, it was, yeah, just we would talk about that kind of every day in rehearsal of like what's really important, right? It's not really about the suitcase, right? It's about showing up for your family and showing up for your loved ones and like trying to grow up a little bit and take on some responsibility and like be there for the people that you need and that now need you. And so I think that's kind of the central thing that kind of drives Robel, and also Femi, his friend, right? Because Femi is of an experience and background where he understands what Robel is tasked with, but ultimately he cares less about the suitcase and more about his friend. And so there's kind of the layers that sort of carry them on this journey. Um,
yes,
and
I saw those layers,
yeah,
that went on in this journey. And you talk about your process. Now, is your process based on your experience as a music director? Because you have worked with a lot of musicians and made music videos. So a lot of your experience is based on as being a music director. Because I've been on sets, music videos, and oh my gosh, oof, I had fun, and sometimes I didn't have
yeah,
fun.
yeah, yeah. So I would say like my early music video work, which was mostly in hip hop, like in here in Seattle, was a lot of the videos. They weren't like party videos or anything. It was kind of, I was kind of building a cinematic language of like how to shoot the city. And some of the cuts were a little slower. I used a lot of like dolly shots and things like that, like things that like felt like you might see them in the context of like a cinema narrative. And that's kind of how I built sort of um some experience in terms of like directing the camera in particular, right? And what was nice about starting out that way too is so often you're working with like musicians or performers where um, they almost handle the majority of the performance, right? You tweak it for a camera, but it's like they're used to being on stage. There's a charisma about folks and this and that. So the heavy lifting in terms of a performance is sort of already done by them, and then so you sort of benefit from that as a music video director, and sort of it's about creating an aesthetic or a rhythm or whatever it is with your visual language. I would say that I was always I'm really inspired by just new wave cinema of all kind of variety. I love Japanese new wave cinema, French new wave, the Iranian new wave of the 90s in particular,
Hmm.
has been really inspirational to me. And so as I was kind of shooting music videos, those were always the kind of films I was watching and sort of inspired by in terms of the way I wanted to write scripts and things like that. And also the way that those films are often cast, where especially with the first couple films of that directors often make, it's like they'll cast first time actors, or they'll find um folks that have never been on screen before, and so they're the casting is very specific to the story they're telling, as opposed to bringing in a familiar face and kind of building around that, which I feel
Right.
like in some ways it sort of works against the reality that you're trying to build, right? Sometimes
Hmm.
if you have recognizable faces, I guess. Um, but yeah, that was it was shooting music videos in a certain way, and also kind of editing and kind of being there through the whole process, kind of learning filmmaking like that, while also watching cinema that was kind of the flavor of the things I wanted to make once I moved into like narrative content, stuff like that.
And then let me ask you this well, I don't know if you call yourself an independent filmmaker, things like that, but being a filmmaker, is it hard to get distribution? I mean, we have all these streaming services now, of course, and many movie theaters, they having problems getting people in the theaters. Do you find that getting distributed is hard, or is it much easier now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how to answer the last part in terms of is it easier now, only because don't this is my first film and I don't have the experience to compare it to, right? But I will say that it's been it's certainly been challenging, at times frustrating, at times a fun challenge, right? Of like, hey, we've got we've got screenings booked in a city, like how do we get folks out, that kind of thing. And that's sometimes it's fun to sort of scheme on, the way you're gonna get the word out and stuff. But I would say, yeah, I think it's it's way more challenging than I anticipated in many ways, especially as an independent filmmaker. And I would call myself an independent filmmaker. We do have distribution for Know Your Place with Blue Harbor Entertainment, which is based out of New York. And so we're doing limited theatrical run right now, which will be followed by some sort of digital release that is being put together at the moment. I don't really have the details on that yet.
Right.
But yeah, even securing distribution through the whole festival run and all this kind of thing, it was certainly a challenge, and it's I think the avenues through which you can sort of get connected, or just get the right looks at your film, right, are sometimes difficult to arrange, and this and all that. But
Yeah.
thankfully throughout this whole process, we um, audiences have continued to show up and show out and support the film. I think in some ways it speaks to the how specific the film is, and like who's
Yeah.
represented in it, and like that's kind of a special experience, I think, for people right now, especially like with the Habesha, American Habesha kind of diaspora community. Like they're really, I don't know that there's been a film like this before, specifically for that represents that crowd, and so that's, I think, really special. And I think there's the resonant themes in terms of what's happening to cities across America, right? redevelopment and sort of displacement and all these things that are affecting folks in their daily lives. So yeah, I mean, all that to say, man, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm kind of rambling on this,
No,
but
no, that's okay. That's okay because you
yeah,
helping me to understand when I talk to many filmmakers, they sometimes have your answer, sometimes they don't have your answer. So then they give me different answers about distribution, getting your film out there, and things like
right,
that.
right.
And also, you want to tell that story, and you explain you wanted to tell that story. You did a very good job with that. I really appreciate that. Well, Zia, my time is up, unfortunately. But I really enjoyed Know Your Place. It's
Thank
a
you.
film I haven't seen before. It's a film that I haven't seen Seattle like that before, really. And like I said, I've been there about 4 times. I love Seattle. And, you know, especially in the spring, summertime, because Seattleans,
Oh
they
yeah,
love to come out. I live in
yeah.
South Florida. Summertime, we love to stay in.
Right,
It's so
right.
hot. You know, but anyway, thank you for this film, Know Your Place. And I want to, I'm glad to meet you. I really am. I wish I had more time, but I'm really glad to meet you. Thank you for
Thank you.
taking
I
time with
appreciate
me.
that. I appreciate
Really,
that. Thank you.
really. Thank you. Have a great
All right,
day
it's good to meet you. Yeah,
and a
thanks
great
for the
future and a
conversation.
great career. I want to see more.
I appreciate it. All right, I'm on it.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
All right.